What factors are leading to so many baby boomers becoming first-time homeless later in their lives?
This is not because due to poor planning. This was due to not knowing what to plan for. It's an aging population that spouses are passing away. A lot of these pensions were set up that as long as the pensioner was alive, the benefits came through. Once they passed, those did not pass on to their spouse.
The housing costs have gotten out of control.
So the people that own homes, especially baby boomers, challenge they're having, they own the home, they can no longer afford the insurance or the taxes. I think it's real important that a large population rents, and most of them did it by choice. They just didn't want the hassle of owning a house. That has now backfired on them.
If somebody in their 50s and 60s suddenly loses their job, how much more difficult is it for them to find employment?
Gosh, I can't even imagine if that happened right now in my life.
Right now, we're seeing corporate downsizing all over the country. We're seeing less jobs being created than we have in a long time.
This older generation figuring out how to work with them through this process has been difficult for all of us.
Hi everyone, I'm Tracy Lewis with Imagine Marketing, and I'm joined by Pastor Scott, who is the founder and CEO of Matthew's Hope, as well as Shelley Bradford, who is the president and executive director of Matthew's Hope. This podcast is produced, filmed, and edited by our amazing John Burkett with Imagine. Welcome to this week's episode of Straight Talk No BS with Matthew's Hope, presented by Imagine Marketing. At Imagine Marketing, we put in the extra effort to craft a tailored strategy for success. Book a free consultation today. In this episode, we'll be talking about the baby boomer problem and what that means for Matthew's Hope. So you guys have often talked about your goal of helping your guests towards a life of independence and self-sustainability. Some of your guests have joined the podcast, and we've talked about going to school to finish a nursing degree, learn a trade, or start a new career. However, adults over 50 are now the fastest growing segment of the homeless population in our country. In fact, baby boomers now in their late 50s through mid 70s are estimated to make up around half of all single homeless adults. We will eventually discuss how you prepare someone in their 60s or 70s for a life of independence and self-sustainability. But first, let's talk about what is causing this silver tsunami. So, what factors are leading to so many baby boomers becoming first-time homeless later in their lives?
This is the toughest thing we have faced. I can say, we're 16 years old now, and I can tell you, even my serving in the homeless community before this, and even my own time being homeless, I never saw anything like this. And I want to make sure people understand, this is not because due to poor planning.
Right.
This was due to not knowing what to plan for.
Mm-hmm.
When you throw in the pandemic, and people don't realize what a role that played, how many folks were unable to work who literally during that time of that age group used their savings to
survive.
Survive. They had nothing coming in. They weren't old enough for retirement. They had been laid off, or their businesses were shut down, so they just could not work. So imagine not working for 2.5 years and having all the same expenses you had a week ago before they shut everything down. That's been one challenge. You throw that on top of the fact that it's an aging population, that spouses are passing away. And so what ends up happening is often people don't realize, especially the older side of that group, that a lot of these pensions were set up that as long as the pensioner was alive, the benefits came through. Once they passed, those did not pass on to their spouse. You also have the fact that you have people that literally could not afford medical care, didn't have insurance, or their deductibles were large, or, I can go a lot of ors here, but medical issues have created a lot of problems for a lot of people. And a lot of people don't know that you can tell a hospital, I can pay you $100 a month, and that's all I can pay you. They feel under pressure. And so what ends up happening is they wipe out their bank account to pay off the hospital.
Yeah.
And now they can no longer survive. Those are just a few that I can think off the top of my head. I'm sure as we talk, I'll come up with a few more.
What about the housing costs? Because we've talked before about how You need a deposit or this much income.
Yeah.
How has that changed from previous years?
In the housing, we have a housing crisis for sure. The housing costs have gotten out of control. And, when I think how blessed I am to have my house, I've said this before, and I know you feel the same way. I was very fortunate to buy my house 20 years ago. There's no way I could afford my house today. And my house is the same house that it was 20 years ago. It's a great house. But if I sold my house, I would make a whole lot of money on my house. But where am I going to go then?
Since you'd have to pay a
Yeah.
whole lot of money to get a
I
new
wouldn't
one.
be able to get the same type house.
Downsize for the same money.
Right. It's not worth it. And, in my parents' generation, which is still the baby boomers, but they're in heaven now, a lot of their people which this could be a reason why people are in the situation they're in today, right? Not as I just thought this through, but a lot of people would move to a nicer house. They would have start a house, and then they would move to a nicer house, and they would move to a bigger house. I don't see me ever doing that, and I'm sure you don't see yourself ever doing that
Not
either.
going anywhere.
Right.
Though I will say, I've done a number of upgrades.
Sure.
And every time I do, I pucker just a little bit because
Me too.
my concern is, what if we see another real
Yeah.
big swing one way or the other? It's very concerning. And the other thing I want to make sure people understand too is, when we talk about housing costs, we're just not talking about people that own homes. The people that own homes, especially baby boomers, challenges they're having, they own the home, they can no longer afford the insurance or the
The
taxes.
taxes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a housing shortage of affordable housing. But when we talk about housing, we're also talking a large population rents.
Mm-hmm.
And at least in the state of Florida, what's happened is you're now required to show 3 times your rent as your salary. So again, say your rent is $2,000 a month. Our folks, many of them can afford that. What they can't do is qualify and show they have a $72,000 income.
Right. Can you remind everybody who's listening and watching about Vicky and Wayne? So they were in their home for 10 years. What happened with them?
They're a perfect situation.
Yeah.
They're a perfect disastrous situation,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they just assumed they would continue to live where they lived. They've been there 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
They had a great relationship with their landlord. Because he was a lifelong military guy, they really didn't have a desire to own. They were always used to moving constantly. And to sort of be someplace for 10 years was phenomenal. And they just assumed we'll keep doing it that. And all of a sudden their landlord sells their house out from underneath them and says, you got a couple weeks to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Could they have fought that? They could have. I don't think they're the kind of people that would have, but they could have. But then the next thing happened is Wayne just assumed that he would just go out there. I've paid my rent for 10 years. I've got a good credit history, what have you, but his income doesn't qualify him. Again, he could pay the rent. This is often what we see. They can't qualify. I have watched apartment complexes move people out that had been paying their rent consistently for years because they no longer qualify.
Makes no sense.
It makes no sense, because you're sitting there going, look, if you're paying for it and you haven't been late,
Right.
why would you move me out because I no longer qualify?
Right.
That's the world we live in right now. So I just want to make sure people understand, when we talk about housing, yes, we talk about the challenges of housing
Homeowners
for homeowners, but I think it's real important that a large population rents, and most of them did it by choice.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't want the hassle of owning a house. That has now backfired on them.
And many people are on a fixed income. So even if their rent goes up, one extra assessment from the city or a hike in property tax might push somebody over the edge. Many people. It could be any of us.
Typically, the jumps of expenses are more than the cost of living raise they may get in their, typically cost of living they show is a raise of anywhere from 2 to 4%. That number hasn't been true for years, but that's the number we use as the federal guideline, somewhere in between there, which is ridiculous. But let's say it just stood at number. If they raise, which typically is more than 2 to 4% here, you get that 2, you still can't reach it. You still can't hit it. Yeah. And so we're seeing a lot of people now that used to work in retirement because they just wanted to be busy.
Mm-hmm.
Now you go into Walmart, the greeters and all those, most of those folks, they need to work.
And they
Yeah.
look exhausted.
They
Yeah.
do look exhausted, but they've also now made it harder for the younger person that used to go for that starter job to get a job.
Yeah.
So again, it backfires once again. When I worked at McDonald's when I was 16 years old, I was not competing against 60-year-old, 70-year-old people for my job. That was a starter job. I was going to flip burgers and learn how to fry fries, right?
Mhm.
And if you saw someone older, it was typically because they just didn't want to sit at home. They weren't a golfer or a fisherman. I want something to do, work a few hours a week.
Right.
Now, those people on both sides of that are looking for a 40 hour work week that will help them sustain a life which is damn near impossible.
Right. So speaking of employment, if somebody gets laid off in their 20 or 30s and they just go look for their next job, but if somebody in their 50s and 60s suddenly loses their job, how much more difficult is it for them to find employment?
Gosh, I can't even imagine if that happened right now in my life. Just because, you know, I've worked so many different jobs, but they all do the same. They all kind of come to the same goal in mind. And there's kids that are getting out of school that want to make close to what I make, but they don't want to make exactly what I make. And so who are they going to pick?
Right.
They're the smart thing for me and you would be to pick the experience.
Mhm.
But a company who's just looking at the dollars and cents, they're going to choose somebody that is younger, that doesn't have the experience that I have, that has the salary requirements that I would have.
Look,
Right.
corporate America is designed to appease the shareholders. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
And so you've got to show a profit so you can pay a dividend and blah, 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 blah. I'm 63 years old. I think of myself at this age having to go look for a job. I am damn good at what I do. I know I'm good. I do occasionally, not as much as I used to, still get chased by headhunters. Occasionally, I still will, where somebody says they find out what I've done, and they want to move me up north or something and give me a ridiculous salary. But even that, I know well enough that that would be for
That's
a
a
short period
moment,
of time.
right.
It's a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I am better off staying where I'm at. But I can't imagine suddenly at 63 going out into the field
Mhm.
and competing against people half my age. They don't have my experience. They don't have any of that. You can also typically get them for half the money,
Right.
or certainly not what I'm currently being paid. Now, for those of you that want to check that out, you got to check out what I made for the first few years. Okay, they're still trying to make up for it, but it's just true. In the nonprofit world, you've got to get all the way to the top, and you've got to do it for quite a long time to really make it pay off financially. That's why I never try to look at my job as a job. It's a calling.
We don't do it for
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah. If you do this for
can't.
money, you're just
You can't.
foolish.
Yeah.
Okay. But you take other people, whatever their passion is, whether it's engineering, whether it's whatever it is. Again, when there's downsizing like we're seeing right now we're seeing corporate downsizing all over the country. We're seeing the employment rate going up. We're seeing less jobs being created than we have in a long time. That's just the facts. That is not a political statement. That is just the facts. It's a lousy market to be in, to be going looking, especially in a professional type position.
Yeah.
So if you lose your job as an older individual, you may be able to find another job, but it's not going to be at the same level as where you were before.
Well, that's exactly what happens, is that there's a lot of people that want your experience, but either they're not in a position to pay for that experience, or I see this other thing, you're overqualified.
Yeah.
And companies are afraid, and I get it. You invest a lot of money in a new employee at every level. You invest a lot of money for them to understand the culture, and in our case, what the mission is and how we go about that. And for people, what happens, the corporate thinking is, well, they're probably going to keep you looking for the job. The minute someone says, "Hey, I'll pay you $100,000 again," they're out of here, and so they just bypass you altogether. So it's that knowledge and age is a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
Few companies, few organizations look at people like we do. We probably pick the least qualified people in the world in a lot of cases, but they're perfect for what we do.
Mhm.
That's not the common.
So what happens when you've spent all of your life building this career and then it's gone?
Well, then that's the other trap that's now been set for you, because you've accepted a job for less money, but it literally is taking everything you have and maybe more. You're probably still dipping into your your savings, your retirement, whatever, you're still doing that. And now you get caught into a trap. And we see this happen all the time where people take whatever they can just to bring some money in, and they really now can't afford to take a day off or to move on. They can't. It just keeps moving you into a corner. And if you don't start giving up lifestyle, which is very difficult as you
Very
get older,
difficult. Yeah.
there's certain things that you feel you kind of earned along the way that all of a sudden it's like, no, you can't do that. You can't travel.
Right.
You can't help your kids out like you used to. I mean, the idea of our past, especially you go back in that generation right before baby boomers, the idea always was to create an opportunity, create investment, if you will, a nest egg that could be passed on to your children so they could have a life better than yours. Those days are gone
Hmm.
because it's literally taking everything somebody has, and now it's taking not just one person working, but
Two
two
incomes.
persons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Used to be, it wasn't that long ago, women didn't work unless they were divorced and had to. They were stay at home moms. And so that's the other part of this baby boomer place is that a lot of women never worked.
Hmm.
That's just how the world ran at that time.
Right.
And all of a sudden in the 70s and that, it became more common for women to work. And then somehow, and I'm still not sure how we got there, you would think having a two-income household would position you pretty good. No, that it became a requirement.
Requirement. Right.
Okay.
Right.
And even our guests right now that we deal with, we try to get them to understand you're probably going to have a roommate
Yeah.
to even qualify for an apartment, to be able to even meet the daily
I can't
needs.
imagine at that age being told that and to absorb that and realize that.
Yeah. Well, at any age, I mean, first off, you think at 30 years old, it used to be at 30 years old, you were pretty much starting to build the base of your
That's
life.
true.
Hmm.
And I'm watching 30-year-olds now that are sharing a house
Or
because
still
that's
at their parents' house.
or living at home.
Going to school and working or
I've got a 26-year-old at home, and I know what she gets paid because she works for me. Um, However, the reality of it is it's tough for her to figure out how she's going to qualify. She's been talking about finding a place here soon, and we're going to do everything we can to help her. But the reality of it is getting in is one part. How do you keep them there?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be tough. And so I think especially for men, because a lot of times with men, they were expected to do a certain thing by a certain time because that
Mhm.
what the generation told you.
Hmm.
And so people say, well, they're just lazy. There's some lazy out there, but there's also just impossible.
Yeah. So is it safe to say that someone could do everything right in their life and still be one incident away from living on the streets or in the woods?
So we actually have a woman right now that I believe she's in her 70s, and her fam she doesn't have family. Whether they've passed on, I don't really know the details. Um, but she had her own home, and then she moved in with a cousin or something like that, and and she moved in to care for this cousin that had medical issues, and then the cousin passed away. The home was paid for,
Mm.
that they didn't properly
The
prepare the paperwork, and now the home's in probate.
Oh,
So now here's this 70 something year old woman
yeah.
who did everything right, took care of her family member, she's literally homeless, and she spent all of her savings on a hotel room so she could stay off the streets.
Right.
Sh Her monthly income is not enough for her to rent anywhere. And so we've really been trying to talk to her and prepare her. Man, you're gonna have to find a room for rent or something,
Yeah.
or else you're gonna end up on the streets.
Right.
Because she cannot afford an apartment by herself,
Mm.
and she doesn't know anybody to room with.
Right.
So
And you mentioned family members. Sometimes it's often a child uh, goes to take care of their parents later on in life,
Mhm.
and often there's assumptions made.
Yeah.
And even the parents have said, this house will be yours.
Right.
She mentions probate. Look, one thing I would tell anybody who's listening to this thing, if you got older parents, address it now.
Mhm.
Know how you're going to care for them, how you get on your accounts, do all those things, because we see it every day that people didn't plan. They assumed certain things, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh no, or they didn't know there was a second mortgage on the house.
Mhm.
There's so many things that play in here that you need to have those open discussions
Yep.
Yeah.
with your, and it's difficult. because often the parents become very much like the children at the tail end
Mhm.
of this. I'm doing this with my mom now, and I don't mean that disrespectfully,
Yeah.
but I work with my mom on her finances so that she can stay where she's at
Mm.
after her husband of 40 plus years passed away,
Mm.
and it was set up pretty good, but she can't live the life she had with him.
Mhm.
And so, and if I was not there to help out, her first, I believe, was 15 weeks before she got her first check from the VA. Most people can't make it 15
No.
weeks
Right.
and they fall through the cracks. And once you fall through that crack, it's a free fall into a dark, deep hole
Mm.
that's very, very difficult to get out
As
of.
you're grieving.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
As you're, that was the toughest part was watching my mom have a hard time even grieving
Mhm.
because she was so panicky about are they going to pick up the car, is the house going to be that was tough.
So have the conversations, like you said, and they're hard. And some parents are going to get mad.
Yeah.
Have the conversations. It's better to have the conversations than to be blindsided.
Yeah.
Sided.
I flat out told my mom, Mama, I don't expect nor do I want anything.
Yeah.
I just want to know that I'm able to care for you the best I can. Should that time come that you have to go into assisted living, fortunately, she had, because Dave was military, she has great medical. If it weren't for that, my mom's got COPD and has been through cancer a couple of times. She'd be on the streets or dead.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many of your volunteers are actually baby boomers. Have you heard any of their impressions of the fact that they're seeing more and more of their peers come through their doors, through your doors?
True. That's a good question.
I've seen some
Because
shock by some.
I can say that. I think our people in Orange County, which is where I spend a bulk of my time, I think they're just so used to walking through the motions. They are good at hiding surprise.
And it's also, I would say this too, they've been in there for a lot of our volunteers, especially again, we're 16 years old now.
Mhm.
Our volunteers, I've got volunteers that have been with us 16 years.
Yeah.
So you don't notice things. It's kind of like when people age, you don't notice it when you're with them every day. And all of a sudden
Yeah.
you go 5 years and you go, holy smokes,
Right.
when do you get the gray beard? Right.
Right.
Or something like that. So I think that newer folks coming in, newer
Yes.
volunteers, one of the things that they notice right off, because I usually, we do a tour, what have you, and I'll say, tell me what your first impressions were. And many times they'll say, I didn't think I'd see this many silver haired people.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that is our fastest growing population right now. And probably will be for the next 20 years.
Mm.
Again, because that's the stretch of that baby boomer era. I think it's 1942 to 1965 or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine anyone handles them finding themselves homeless very well. But do you notice anything particular about the attitudes or outlooks of those that find themselves homeless for the first time later in life?
There's a lot of pride there, a whole lot of pride.
A
And
lot of depression.
I mean, sometimes the two go hand in hand. And breaking through that is tough sometimes because they've had a successful life. Um, historically, we've worked with a younger generation, and that's just how it has happened. But now, now that we have this older generation, we know pretty well how to work with this younger generation. This older generation, figuring out how to work with them and work with them through this process has been difficult for all of us because we're sitting here and we're like, well, this model we had really good.
Mhm.
You need to be about 40 years younger.
We are having to literally, and it's not. I usually pretty quickly can adjust to things that are changing their demographic. Even planning for this, warning others that it was coming. Even I will tell you, wake up in the middle of the night on a regular basis. Just the other night, 3 o'clock in the morning, pops in my head. I wake up, I'm done. I have to, and I sat up and I tried to make myself some notes and try to say, well, this and this gets, you're dealing with the end game. We always
It's
say
not,
when you
yeah.
come into our program, it's a catch and release program. There's an end game to get you fully independent and self-sufficient. You're going to school, you're doing this, you're getting these credentials, blah, blah, blah. When you're my age and older, what ends up happening is there's medical issues. There's companies fearful of hiring you, going back to that, because of possible medical issues. Or when you have to say to your employer, well, I have to see my cardiologist the third Thursday of every month. And it's like, well, they may
Yeah.
not say anything, but I guarantee you that HR person's thinking, I don't know how we're going to make that work. Oh, you have a health issue.
Mhm.
I'm going to give you an example. We have a guy right now who is probably one of the hardest workers I've ever had. And Michael had a number of strokes all in a very short period of time. And to this day, he has what looks like a stutter step before he gets going. We tease him about being like a cartoon, got the wheels and then also, boom, they go.
Once he's warmed up.
Once he rolls, he is the hardest worker I've ever had. He's constantly in motion. He never complains. He goes above and beyond every day. He advocates for himself. He does everything we want somebody to do. And the problem is, it's going to be very hard. He's a little younger than I am. It's going to get him hard to get him rehired. But also from our end, what is our liability when we bring somebody in that has a history of strokes? And what happens? It sounds silly for the most part. We're a ministry, and my attitude is, God save us and walk us through it. But God gave us a brain also. So, we're talking with our medical team and we're looking at housing opportunities to say, well, how do we help get this person housed? They don't have enough money to pay for it themselves. Can Matthew's Hope supplement it somehow? And then how long can you do that? There's all these things that come into it. I mean, I've got people right now that I work with, some landlords, that I will eventually be able to turn those apartments over to those people. We will create that opportunity for them, and then they're on their own. Again, when you get to this older generation, when your check is $1,000 a month, okay, and you get a couple $100 in food stamps, so now say you're $1,200 a month, where are you going to go for that?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that won't even get you into a one-bedroom place. That won't barely get you, if you're lucky, into an efficiency. So you're going to have to live with someone else. Well, that means you got to find someone who possibly is in the same age group. So how helpful are you going to be to each other? So again,
So many factors.
this is a tough one. And when you see that, the current administration is cutting off all what they call permanent supportive housing, that's a big deal too, because we're going to be cutting loose a lot of people onto the streets here soon, because those programs are disappearing. Those are people that thought they were going to be housed for really be supplemented the rest of their life. Usually do because they're disabled, because they're elderly, what have you, that literally in the next several months are going to become homeless again. Never thought they would be. And it's going to sound something like this. The agency that dealt with them is going to knock on the door and say, hey, I'm going to have to move you out of here next month. Well, where am I going to go? I don't know, but we can no longer support it. That literally is what's happening right now. I've always been I challenge those type of programs for the supportive housing, because I do think there's been people that take advantage of it. But we need to address it appropriately, not put people that are disabled or with small children or elderly on the streets while we figure it out.
Yeah. So, what unique challenges to older first-time homeless individuals pose that aren't necessarily addressed by your traditional moving forward program?
The biggest thing is, how are we going to move them forward?
Yeah.
How are we going to move them, like Scott said earlier, to finish their lives well? That's not as easy as, the younger generation of teaching them skills, because they already have the skills. So it's almost offensive to them.
You almost have to look at some of these folks. If corporate America would do it, is bring some of these folks in as mentors. Okay, pay them a fair wage to pass on their knowledge and skills. I think if we tap into this, there's a brain trust out there that we're going to lose, that could easily be gained. We haven't taken advantage of. That's one step that I think that we could do from a corporate standpoint. If businesses would do that. Okay, Johnny can't do this, but man, he knows why it works, how it works. He can take it apart and put it back together with his eyes closed. That is a lost skill set. And there's certain areas that, there's a reason why so many of our people are going to tech schools to become plumbers, electricians, HVAC guys, what have you, because that's not going to be replaced. AI is not going to replace that.
Right.
But there's knowledge out there that can be given. Woodworking,
Absolutely.
again, lost art. There's so many things out there. The other side of it is again, that is another stepping stone, but you still have to address what's next. A lot of the money that's being switched from permanent supportive housing to others to towards transitional housing, which you would think we would sit there and go, yay,
Yay. Yeah.
because that's what we do. We specialize in transitional housing. The other side of it is there's a huge group of people in this world, in our country, that transitional housing is going to do nothing for them. There is no transition to what?
Right.
So we need to start using our heads in Washington, um, and in Tallahassee for Florida, and start finding where's the middle ground. Yes, let's look at what supportive housing needs to be pulled back on, but let's not punish everybody else because of that. Let's realize that we can't take some of these people and transition them to independence. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Their transition looks more like into an assisted living situation or what have you.
Mhm.
Again, if you have ever priced that out,
Yeah.
It is not cheap.
holy smokes, okay? It's a lot of money.
Mhm.
So, Scott, you talked about your experiences of being homeless yourself earlier in your life. Can you imagine being dropped down in the woods or the sidewalk right now at your current age with no belongings and being told just to figure it out?
It's my greatest fear. I own a home. I make a good living now. I've been off the streets for a long time, and I still look over my shoulder every day. Uh, I cannot imagine when I sit with these people and you hear them and you hear the fear. I mean, just the fear of not just being outside and not being able to pay for their bills. They're assaulted constantly.
Mm.
I cannot tell you how many people have come in with black eyes, uh, limping or what have you. You go like, what happened? Well, these kids hit me. Um, or they came across someone that was also homeless, but they were mentally ill.
Mhm.
They couldn't tell because a lot of mental illness, you don't see it on the surface until it happens. And they're in the wrong place, the wrong time. The fear of being arrested, with these new laws. I mean, we're arresting people for sleeping outside. When the governor of Florida sold this whole line of BS, um, was that this was going to be designed where there would be places for people to go. 2 years later, there's
Still
not
none.
one dime,
Still
not
none.
one thing for places to go, but we're arresting people, which to me, it just feels like cruel and unusual punishment. Why someone isn't yelling for Amendment 8
Yep.
is beyond me. They'll tell you all damn sure about Amendment 2. Got to carry my gun.
Yeah.
Got to have my holster there. Yeah, I don't give a damn if you have a gun. I really don't care. If you know how to use it responsibly, I'm not sure everybody does. I got a gun pulled on me the other day by a UPS driver. I'm not sure he was using it responsibly. He got pissed off and pulled a gun on me. Okay. Yeah, well, the cops caught him. But, I could ruin his life right now if I posted his picture online. The point is, that's
His life's
somebody that
ruined
shouldn't
anyway.
have a gun.
Right.
Okay. But I'm not going to get in the whole gun thing. It just bothers me when it's crazy. Well, we know everything about Amendment 2,
Mhm.
but we don't know about Amendment 8. Do we believe in the Constitution or do we not? That's where, we're going to get more political. And anybody wants to get, I don't care. I simply don't care. Is if you believe in this country like you say you do, then let's use the whole Constitution,
Not the
use it
part we
right.
want.
That will solve a lot of our problems because it will guide us what we should be doing. It will help us make the decision. But when you are changing the finish line every few weeks, that makes it really, really tough. Really tough.
Scott and Shelley, how can people
Feel the
hear?
passion there.
No, it's very good. It needs to be said.
It's sad.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm tired of crying. I'm crying for other people because I'm sitting there going, I know you want help and there's nothing I can do. And unfortunately, I get more sad when I realize that nobody else cares.
Yeah.
And you just sit there and go, well, how can you not care?
Right. How can people hearing this help you, help them, help themselves?
Yeah. Donations are a big thing because that's going to really help us figure out how we're going to move people to whatever the next step is. But if we don't have and it doesn't just have to be a donation of finances, but if people have property, then they would be willing to let these people live in and live out their lives. And that would be amazing for us.
Or work with us in
Yeah,
developing
that's
housing.
absolutely right. Right.
Okay. People are in a position, you know, when I was thinking about that, when you asked that question and Shelley started to speak, one of the things I thought of is um, the most power any of us have still is our vote.
Mhm.
The most power any of us still have is our voice. And we need to let Washington and Tallahassee know that if you're going to make these laws, let's make them good for all the people, not just the pretty people
Right.
that you care for, not just your donor base. Unfortunately, our politicians, most of them are appeasing their donor base. Um, and I get it, I really don't, but I guess I do. The point is we need to be asking, and I've said this for 2 years now, simply send a letter, show up at the city council meetings, the county council meetings, um, write letters to your state senator, your county management people, your city managers, mayors, police chiefs, everybody that can do anything, and just ask this: what's the plan? And if there is a plan, share it with the rest of us. If there's not a plan, tell us why not.
Hmm.
And lastly, since we all admit there's not a plan, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to let it continue to, like lava coming at us, and we go, God, that's going to hurt like hell when it gets to us? Or are we going to sit there and go, let's see what we can do to stop that? Okay, we got to quit trying to figure out how to get people out of people are jumping in. Put it this way, they're jumping into a stream of moving water. We need to quit trying to figure out how to fish people out of the moving water and start wondering why they're jumping in. We need to peel the onion back, and we need to look at causes rather than treating symptoms. And when we do that, this country will once again become the greatest country ever. We used to think that way. That's how we thought as a country. We looked at for the good for all.
For all.
For all. And our politicians, though they were on two sides of the aisle, they came together and said, okay, we'll give this, you give this. I don't agree with that, but I can give up that for this. It's not like that anymore. We literally have, I mean, when you think that, is it Congress that hasn't even, they did 87 days? Anybody else want to get paid for a whole year for 87 days of sitting on your ass doing nothing? Because those 87 days, they did nothing, but the rest of the time they did even less. And that's okay. That's your taxpayer money. See, that's the thing. We got to say, I'm going to say it because, damn it, I'm pissed off right now. Okay. These are taxpayer funded public servants. It's time to start treat them as such. No one is any better than anybody else.
They're not rock stars.
And just because you got voted in doesn't make you the smartest man in the room. Our hope is you surround yourself. I'm not the smartest person at this table, but I know how to bring in the people around me that know and are gifted to do things. That's how you operate an organization. We don't do that anymore. We try to see how many yes men we can get, and then I don't know. I was going to drop the F-bomb, and I don't want to do that.
Thank you.
So I'll shut up for a minute.
No, that's all very true. And I'm going to close. Let's leave it at that. But let's remind the community that any one of us, especially us at the table, you watching, you listening, can become homeless. It doesn't matter your job, your race, your age, any one of us, it could happen.
Yeah.
Homelessness.
And we're experiencing that.
No, it does not.
It does not play favorites at all.
So let's remember that. Let's figure out what we can do as an individual and a community. You guys
do what you can, not what you can't.
Absolutely.
Not one of us can fix this by ourselves. But when we come together, for those of you that claim to believe in Christ, if that's true, let's start showing it. Okay. And when we each do something, whatever that is, time, talents, treasures, whatever it is, you start bringing that all together. I think God will honor that in a big way. In fact, I know he will because he does it at Matthew's Hope every day.
And we're going to end on that. That is great. Make sure you guys are following Matthew's Hope because they specifically say their needs So make sure that you're following them so you guys know how to put your step forward and help them help themselves.
Amen.
Thank you for watching and listening, and we'll see you guys next time.